start recording. So today we will finally be getting into what human trafficking itself is all about and some things that Future Unchained has been trying to spread awareness about. So as we discussed on, I think, last Friday, we went through a pretty simple general introduction of what human trafficking is. And we talked through the act, means, and purpose of human trafficking. So if you weren't there, I highly recommend you to watch the recording of what we spoke on last Friday. And for as of right now, we are just going to dive into each type of human trafficking. So there are 3 types of human trafficking, and there's labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and organ trafficking. So these labor trafficking, sex trafficking, organ trafficking, they target different types of victims and especially different demographics. And so we will just start with labor trafficking for our first. So if you don't have your cameras on yet, please feel free to turn them on. Again, we're in focus mode, so no one else will be able to see you other than the hosts. So can everyone see my screen? Yep. Okay. Thank you. So labor trafficking is one of the 3 types of human trafficking. Labor trafficking is especially about having forced labor inside the game. So how are we going to start? What is labor trafficking in general? So labor trafficking involves recruiting and transporting or holding victims to coerce them into doing any type of work that would generate value. So instead of exploiting on these victims themselves, the trafficker would exploit them to do work for them. So labor traffickers get their victims to work through different forms of coercion. And how would they take control of the victim? So if you recall from what we mentioned on last Friday, there are 3 different kind of parts to what human trafficking is. So there's the acts, the means, and the purpose. So the act is basically how the trafficker has lured the victim into the game. And so this part is all about the act. And in addition, this part is also about the means, because this is what keeps the victims from escaping. Traffickers control their victims in various ways, such as taking away their identity documents and passports, sexual abuse, threats, intimidation, physical violence, and isolation. So they basically just make sure that, first of all, you're not capable of running away yourself, and second of all, you don't have the ability to seek help. So one of the excerpts from a criminal division in the court of Quebec was that he told her that he had control over her, that she belonged to him, and that he could do anything he wanted to her. So this is basically what human trafficking is about. It's about treating the victim as not a person, but a merchandise or a commercial product, so that they could just basically exploit any value out of these victims. So there are also some red flags that are pretty obvious when it comes to labor trafficking. So first of all, if there are overpromises, well, like this is if you are finding a job opportunity and you find that, these people, they might be taking advantage over you. So if you find a job and it says overpromises, if they don't allow you to ask them any questions, or they don't provide answers to your question, if they say that their job is located in a really unusual and weird space, and if, for example, their job descriptions are pretty just awkwardly worded, so they don't provide much detail or all that stuff. And if the agreements and contracts seems really just unprofessional, if they have an odd cash flow, if they don't really provide you any information, and if you just basically aren't really allowed to come and leave whenever you want. So basically, the red flags is just about what might be some hints that this company is not a real company and might be doing something illegal. And so just because that, well, at the same time, just because that they do seem right does not always mean that they are right. It's always not bad to check extra information, either online or through actual platforms, to ensure that, the place that you are seeking an employment at is the right place. And especially if you have a friend or if you do know someone who is going to like a job interview, it's really important to just have where they are, because location is one of the most important indicators of someone's safety. So there are also some employees' rights that I would like to personally go over, just because I know for our group, we are all in the age of like, trying to maybe get like a part-time job or are ready to go off into society with a full-time job. There are a lot of employees' rights that we should be able to be aware of. So some of the basic rights, and keep in mind that this slice is mainly based in Canada. However, I do think that most companies and countries around the world should have like a similar legal aspect to the things that we should be able to have. So first of all, the right to equal pay for equal work. How should I say this? If you wrote 500 articles of whatever, you shouldn't be paid less than someone who wrote the same 500 articles of the same thing. And so you have the right to equal pay, especially if you don't have like it written on the contract, but still you would have the right to receive payment and to receive an equal payment than your co-workers. You also have the right to know. So basically, to know what you will be doing and to know all the dangers, to know all the potential risks, and also all of the other things that you want to know. You have the right to basically know what your company will be making you do, and you have the right to refuse if you are not comfortable with it. And at the same time, you still have the right to participate in any activities against the company. So just because you are working at that company does not mean that you have to agree with exactly what they say. You can refuse to do what they want you to do. And at the same time, you can participate in any activities that is against the company. And other basic rights include, again, you get paid fairly and equally at a rate that is greater than the minimum wage. And other things are about like Canadians. So if you are working overtime, of course, you should be getting overtime pay. And if you have public holidays, you should be enjoying these public holidays. And if you do not have vacations, you should get vacations. And just because there are other things happening, that doesn't mean that they can deduct your wage on any time or through anything that they want. And if you are being unemployed or if your employment is being terminated, you have the right to be notified in advance. So I think in Canada, the bare minimum is like, I think 6 weeks to like 3 months. And the longer you work at a company, the more rights that you have. But this is, again, I think this has like a similar structure around the globe as well. So it's not just limited to here. So now we will be watching a real case on someone who is a child labor survivor, and I will just be playing the video. Please let me know if you have trouble hearing or seeing anything.
It took me almost 2 months. Survivor and forced marriage survivor. My name is Nasreen Sheikh. I come from very rural village on the border of India and Nepal. Most of the people are undocumented, which means like the people who born there or died there, there's no birth certificate. So because of that, I also don't know how old I am. I can guess 25, 26, 27 years old. My village was completely male-dominated society, and I saw my aunt being murdered for speaking up for herself, and I witnessed my 12-year-old sister being forced into marriage. And my mom, she said that this is what happened to me, this is what is happening to your sister, and someday it will happen to you. I chose to run away the village because I did not want it to be forced into marriage. One of my cousin who was working in the sweatshops, he took me from the village to Kathmandu when I was around 9 or 10 years old. When I came to the sweatshop for the first time, they teach me how to do the stitch just straight, and then I was keep practice. I would do the brooming and I would wash the dishes or collecting the water, but mostly in the machine. And my machine was like higher than me, so we had to put other stack of clothes so I could fit in the machine. It took me almost 2 months to look out of the window because I was so scared. I come from like such a small village, and then all of a sudden I'm in the big city. It gave me a shock. In the sweatshop, 6 of us, 4 of them were adult, lived, worked, slept in 10 by 10 room without bed or bathroom or having access to even clean drinking water. We were paid less than $2 and forced to work almost 12 to 15 hours a day. We had piles of orders, like 500 pieces, 600 pieces, and we needed to finish that on time. And if we did not finish, we will not get paid at all. So for that reason, we had to wake up sometime 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and work all the way to midnight, and still the pile of clothes will be not finished. We didn't had any day off, like 7 days work, like one order will come and the second order is coming back again. It was like cycle. Sometimes we also would dye. My hand would stay black almost for a week, and then I would put kerosene in my hand and try to take off that color. And then the kerosene stays like a smell when I would eat food. The rice and lentils were like very low nutrition food they gave. And my food, all of the dust of the clothes, like the little fibers will go into the food, and often I would pick up like that long threads from my food. So much chemicals are dyed in those clothes, and then eventually it gets discarded into the rivers and end up in the oceans also. It harms the earth too. Fashion is one of the most polluting industry in the world. I was not completing the whole piece. I was doing just one part, and label or tag was happening somewhere else. The designs were same, like fast fashion. Thousands of pieces being repeated on and on. Our part was to just stitch. My little fingers, they were like fast as machine, because I knew that in order to get a little bit of rest, I need to be fast. And that is when I felt like I was not a human. I felt like a machine. And I just hated those clothes. They were woven with the energy of my suffering. Many times when I was in the sweatshop, I would collapse onto the large bundle of clothes that I was making. Like I didn't even have a bed, and I would just daydream like where these clothes are going to, who is going to wear them. I started to talk to the shirt or the clothes that I was making, and talking to the shirt and saying, whoever will wear these clothes, I hope they can feel me. I hope they can feel my blood. I hope they can see my tears. Because as a young child, I just wanted to go to sleep, and it was not possible. And I tell people that, like, whoever is wearing those clothes, and some people are wearing those clothes right now, and they don't know. If you don't know where your clothes or where your things comes from, you might be consuming suffering. I want people to know where your things come from, so you don't have to consume suffering. After working 2 years in the sweatshop, it got shut down. The agent ran away with 2 months of our salaries, and rest of the other people who were working with me, they went to find work in another sweatshop, and I became in the daytime a street kid. And the sweatshop room in the nighttime, that was the place that I would come and sleep. And that is when I met a complete stranger. He was a monk and he was living in Nepal, and this man became like my mentor, and he started to give me education how to read and write. And with that, I was able to seize my destiny. The sweatshop room, that space, that is where my teacher would come for like 1 or 2 hours and teach me. And at the same time, the machine that was left over, I started to use this machine, and whatever the skills that I have learned in the sweatshop, I started to make bags and purses. And instead of like selling to the agent, this time I was selling to the store, and that brought a little bit more income to my life, and then also gave me a dream that I can educate more women and girls who are just like me, who are working for the sweatshop, who are abandoned and disadvantaged by the societies. So I started to bring slowly these women and girls into that place, and I took a loan, and then with that loan I bought like 1 machine, 2 machine, and then we were like 6 women. We started local women's handicraft shop, and that became the way to express our activism and what ethical fashion looks like. That became like a hub, and all these people from all around the world started to come, and our story got published in 2012 in Forbes magazine. And we didn't even know what Forbes magazine is, because when you are focused in your mission, magic works, and the people that you need, it comes to the life. In 2013, we built our Women's Empowerment Center. So far, we have trained over hundreds of women, and we are making sure everybody is being paid living wage. The working conditions are good. There's clean water. We have organic gardens, and that center is becoming a place for rest of the other society. As an example, this is how the workspace should be look like. Back in Nepal, even I am published in Forbes and I'm running these businesses. My society in 2012, they tried to force me into marriage with a man I never met or talked once. But with the help of my friends and families and my teacher back then, I was able to survive that, and I was able to escape that. To the women, the girls who are listening and who are feeling they're not enough, they can't make that change, I want them to just take one step. My first one step was just to leave that village and be in the street. And when I was in the street, then I was in the bus. And then I had to climb through all this mountain to come all the way here. And it's just that little step that brings you to who you are and why you are here. In 2015, when I came to America and I walked to these major stores, that is when I realized, like, oh my God, people are buying without knowing what happens the other side. Right now, America is consuming 40% more than they used to consume 20 years ago. America imports $3.1 trillion of goods and services from all over the world, and that contains slavery. Our phone, the computer, the clothes, at what cost it is producing. First of all, I would say to these companies that stop importing human slavery. It's like a chain. So on the certain chain, some people knows, but they keep the information hidden. Most of these unregulated manufacturers use all these undocumented individuals who work from like secret and illegal sweatshop that are hidden in these all unmarked buildings throughout inner cities and slums and villages. Because the companies are not mapping their supply chain, that is where the disconnection is, because CEOs are most focused on quantities and fast. That's it. Not necessarily the quality also, because that is why the shirt that you will buy in the fast fashion, you wear for like few months and then it falls apart. And rest of the human part and nature part, climate part, it's just not even in our awareness. You can make a difference. The world is really counting on you, and as long as you step into that power, there will be change. And if fast fashion is destroying and taking over the humanity, you are the catalyst for that change. Alone, I can do something, but together we can do massive things.
Okay, so that was the video of someone who was a child labor survivor and was just basically making clothes. And so again, that is something that I wanted to say, is that a lot of times people don't know what is happening, and without us even knowing, we become like part of the problem. And I don't mean to like guilt trip anyone, because I'm basically the same. I don't know where this shirt comes from. I don't know who put their work into this. And I'm just hoping that, these stores have the basic human decency to hire people to do this instead of just putting things basically off of exploitation. But at the same time, we definitely know that things are happening and that there are things that are out of our control. But what we can do is to spread awareness. And so that being said, I know that there really isn't a transition here, but here's a recent DSS case. So basically 3 individuals were defrauded and recruited 76 workers at a farm in Minnesota, and they mandated high upfront fees for the recruitment. So basically, for them to hire you, you had to pay fees, which at this point, I think we should all know that this is something that is really odd. So if you are looking for a job, don't ever pay fees because they are needing your work and you shouldn't be paying them anything. And at the same time, the victims were physically and psychologically threatened, and they were threatened to be blacklisted. So if they were disobedient, they would be blacklisted, and the thugs threatened with physical violence. So I guess what we could kind of see is first of all, the act. The act is that these people needed work. The victims needed to get an opportunity, a job opportunity. However, at the same time, they also have the means. The means is that the victims are threatened to be blacklisted. So, if they are threatened, they don't want to leave the game, and the traffickers just get what they want. And what does the trafficker want? That is the purpose, right? So the traffickers want a free labor or people that can listen to them. So here is just how we can kind of just apply act, means, and purpose again, just from this recent case. And I actually don't remember where this case came from, but if I happen to find it again, I will share this in the Google Classroom as well. So there are different forms of illegal labor. I'm not really going to dive into this. If you guys want, feel free to take a screenshot. And we have bonded labor, forced labor, and child labor. So child labor and forced labor is kind of self-explanatory, and bonded labor is something that I kind of wanted to put a special emphasis on. So bonded labor is not a really wide known type of forced labor or labor trafficking or illegal labor, but it's very widely practiced. Basically is that it's like people are put in debt by these traffickers. So basically they give you a really large loan, and then you're basically in debt forever. And that is when they start to threaten you. So it's if you cannot repay me the money, then you have to work for me. So this is really similar to what happened after the slavery civil war in the States in the 19th century. So these slaves, they were newly freed. However, they were still back to work, back to being forced laborers, because they were in such big debts from their previous owners. And so here are just different forms of illegal labor, and they're bonded, forced, and child labor. Child labor is basically just putting children inside, and forced labor is just forcing them to work against their will. I think there is a video, but I will share that with everyone because we just don't happen to not have enough time to watch all the videos. So statistics, again, 24.9 million are trapped in forced labor worldwide, and that is just the public data. There's definitely more that we do not know of. And 60 million of labor trafficking victims are working in private industries, and 4.1 are working in state-imposed state authority industries and are basically just state-imposed forced labor. Every 1,000 people in the world, there are 5.4 victims of modern slavery, which is a really it's a really high percentage. And 1 in 4 victims of modern slavery, that is 25%, are children. So of course, I guess I should also be talking about how you can help yourself. So first of all, be aware of the red flags that we mentioned a few minutes ago, and don't give up if you just cannot leave the situation, because you can always reach out for help. If you are uncomfortable with letting the police know, or if you are scared that people will know about the police and will further punish you, please feel free to reach out to a helpline or hotline, or just reach out to anyone that you think will be able to help you. And there are emergency helplines. These ones are for Canada, and it's just really nice if you could kind of basically find your local resource. And if you're flying around the globe, if you have a lot of places that you are going, it's really nice to just kind of be aware of the police numbers of the local place that you are going. So it's 911 in the North American countries. I'm not sure if Mexico has it, but like the United States and Canada definitely is 911. In China, it's 110. In Korea, I think it's 112. It's just be aware of like how to get in touch with the police locally. And there are also useful resources that I will share. All from Canada as well as from other countries, nonprofits and all that. So there are already some actions taken, and especially in Ontario. But at the same time, there are things that we could do to bring awareness as well. So first of all, for labor trafficking, we can definitely say that advocate for like more labor laws regarding laborers and everything, because once you protect the people who are actually employed, at least you minimize the gray areas, and this way you only have to worry about the black markets and all of that. And at the same time, I would like to have a 2-minute breakout room discussion. So we have currently how many people in the room? Let me share the screen first. So 2-minute breakout room discussion. And I know we didn't really go through a lot, but just from the information that we have all talked about for the past half an hour, and from the case study that we have watched, please feel free to answer some of these questions or just basically share your thoughts. So we have 8 people excluding me, and I will just basically put you guys into 2 different breakout rooms with 4 people in each room. Are we all good with that? Can we get like a thumbs up, thumbs down? All good? Okay, perfect. Okay, the real question is, how do I open a breakout room? There we go, got it. There. And then we'll be back in, I don't know, at 1:33. Okay, so let's give a minute for everyone to join back from the breakout rooms. And then we will move on to sex trafficking. So sex trafficking is a really interesting topic because it has an even vaguer line between sex trafficking and just basically regular sex work. So what is going on with room 2? Okay, I think they're still they're still talking. Let's have them finish up whatever they're doing, and then we will start. Okay, so I'm really glad that everyone is back, and I was just saying how sex trafficking is a has like a really vague line between sex trafficking and just regular sex work. So we had a guest speakers interview that we would usually share with this topic. So the guest speaker's name was Maria, and some general info, you don't have to read all this, just listen to me say this. So they were trapped by their adoptive mom at 3 years old, and they were trafficked from 3 to 8, and was trafficked again from 8.5 to 10, and from 10 to 13, like they were trafficked by their biological father, who had basically like 65 kids because he was just a beast, and got back to Canada at 13. So Maria is a Canadian native Canadian who we call Indigenous people, and she tried to run away, but they got shot and stabbed by the corrupt police who raped them when they were only 12 years old, and they were also trafficked internationally in South America, and I think just in Central South America, and went through a lot of tough situations from 13 to 17 and got out at 17 years old. So they escaped with 3 other girls, and the other victim might have been killed, but they learned how to fix their wounds after too. And there were a structural level that the traffickers have built. So if you are at the lower level, you had to listen to exactly what the traffickers had to say. They weren't really granted food. Well, like at least not in a food that could, like, even basically fulfill their basic need to nutrients. And but there were these like structures. As you climb to the top, as you obey them, you climb to a higher spot, and you get to have more voice as well. And one of the benefits of climbing to the top is that you get to kill other people who needs to be killed. So that is not a real like benefit, as we all know, but that is one of the privileges that the traffickers has given to people who climb to the top, including Maria. And somehow Maria managed to save the other girls, and that to pretend as though they killed them, and couldn't really show any emotions due to safety reasons. And nor can they tell us how they saved the other girls, because once you are in the game, you are basically always in a dangerous situation. So there are a lot of confidential information that they were not able to share with us. In 2020, Maria had an interaction with the police, and they were just really violent and threatened to shoot Maria with a gun. And yeah, the police also did not help Maria from finding her identification, and just all the family and everything else. The police basically refused to help because the police just said that it was too hard, which in reality, we all know in 21st century, it's not that hard to find information. But yeah, that is just the system that we're working with right now. And so Maria is now doing outreach to help in saving victims from sex trafficking, and has a daughter and a boyfriend, so they are doing all well. So some of the general info again, well, maybe not info, but like some of the general issues and aftermath that sex trafficking victims can carry is, first of all, trauma. So Maria's brother was also trafficked with them, and they concluded that male victims can end up extremely homophobic and just hating men because they have been abused, and they have just had traumatic experiences with homosexual activities. And so they also avoid themselves from being labeled as gay by others, because it reminds them of the horrible traumatic experiences that they have had. And of course, it also other mental issues comes with, say, antitrust, animal abuse, antisocial. Some of them might even develop DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which is when like their identity kind of just they have like multiple personalities. I think that is what people used to call it. And of course, they would also have seizures and have like psychopathy. And what Maria finds to be the issue is that there is not enough awareness on male victims. And there's not enough awareness on children who are lured from schools or at malls or other familiar places, because parents, they usually just tells children, don't talk to strangers, be aware of places that you're not aware of. But at the same time, a lot of these things happen when you are with the most familiar people at the most familiar places. And of course, marginalized communities such as Indigenous people, people of color, minorities, women, they are also very vulnerable because they are just not, they don't have enough power in the society. So I guess there are also some solutions and tips. However, I want to play one of the videos first. This one was from like the interview that I had with Maria a while ago. Was your brother like trafficked with you, or was he?
They were, because like I was the one cleaning up shit, they're like blood for them a lot. But I realized that my brother Gabriel, camps.
Sorry. So basically, can everyone hear now?
And
Around brother details, yeah, it keeps on glitching for me too. But basically what Maria was saying that is that their brother has been trafficked with sex trafficking as well. And for most of the part, they did not develop autism. They also was able to speak clearly. He was also able to just basically function properly until he was trafficked, and then he started throwing knives at people. He started just basically couldn't talk. He was mute. And he also just developed a really strong sensation of homophobia. So that was basically just to catch up.
I'd say around like they were groomed a lot to become pimps.
Mm-hmm.
And like watching that, now they end up being sexually trafficked with it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the intent to watch women be tortured.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can be desensitized.
Yeah.
And we also get tortured by men.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can feel, so that they get hatred towards the gay aspect.
So yeah, so the people who sorry, I'm just trying to have like a deeper, better understanding. So the male victims would usually end up homophobic because they experienced trauma with homosexual activities.
Yeah, and this happens a lot. I see this a lot, especially because they feel like were gay because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and like, and they're like, then they just, yes, when they go unhoused, and then the community on the streets, like, yo, that's gay, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll
Yeah.
beat that up, like, I'm not gay. Like, what the f? I'm not gay. And then they'll get all upset, and they'll be like, whenever you try and bring it up, they'll be like, yo, f you. I'm not gay. Like,
Yeah.
yo, are you fucking dumb, yo? Like, that's stupid, bro. Like, and then they'll never want to talk about it. And then the thing is like, also, the other part is that, like, then there's the other part where, like, they'll kind of be like, what's it called again? Like, I've known a lot of males who get out of that, and then they'll end up working themselves on the DL with males, either working themselves in the gay community,
Mhm.
or they'll be, like, deeply ashamed to even talk about, to even, like, mention the words of, like, male, like, even be touched anywhere near that area.
So yeah, that is basically a general view of some of the effects of sex trafficking, especially for male victims. And some of the other parts that she was saying at the end was that there are a lot of times where these male victims who want to prove that, you know, they are still masculine and want to prove that they're still men, they actually are put inside the game as, like, for example, people who may commit harm to other women as well, because they may be just used to women around them being hurt, and also they want to prove their masculinity, so they take part in hurting other women. So, of course, as we all know, this is like a negative loop. So once you are in this, you know, once you are part of this issue, it's really hard to get out. And a lot of times we also want to know is, like, why does sex trafficking happen? So sex trafficking happens for a variety of reasons, but one of the top three is poverty, a broken family, and pornography. So as we talk about, get into more training later, we'll go through what are pull and push factors. So push factors is basically what pushes you into the industry. So for example, say poverty. Poverty pushes you into the industry, and broken families pushes you into the family. Pushes you into the industry. However, pornography is a pull factor because it's not pushing you to do this. Instead, it's dragging you into the industry. So pornography is on the demand side. So because there is demand for pornography, therefore there are people who are getting sex trafficked. So at the same time, sex trafficking is considered as a low risk, high reward activity, and the crime is really difficult to detect, and it's highly profitable, and the victims are typically vulnerable and easily manipulated. And also, there are a lot of times there's just little girls and little kids. So these people just really like to target people who are easily to listen to them, who are very obedient and who will not say no, because if they traffic little kids, then these kids are growing up in this type of environment, and they would think that this is the norm, rather than us who think that, you know, having the freedom is, you know, by default what we should be having. If you were growing up as like a trafficked kid, then you may think that, you know, everyone grows up like this. So again, there are some ways that these victims are trafficked around. So first of all, they could be from kidnapping. They could also go from recruitment. And just because that, you know, a victim is recruited and that they may have willingly went with the trafficker, that does not mean that they have given consent for themselves to be trafficked. And just because they might have given consent does not mean that they are no longer a victim of human trafficking. Victims are then also brought to a location and are usually not allowed to leave. And finally, they're also abused or threatened into submission and are forced to perform sexual labor and also other like work that they are supposed to kind of just do. So again, we will have some red flags of sex trafficking specifically. So sex trafficking, first of all, there are signs of unusual wealth without explanation. So for example, if someone got like new jewelry, clothes, this is more than likely that they are being trafficked for sex trafficking. Well, not like always if someone got like new jewelry, but if you know that this person definitely could not afford anything, but all of a sudden they're wearing things that are, first of all, very expensive, secondly, not adjusted to or not appropriate for them, just like we mentioned on Friday. If they're wearing inappropriate stuff, then that could be a sign that someone who does not care about them has brought the items for them, as well as lack of information of where the worker lives or where they live on their own. And if they are moving from place to places on a consistent basis and are generally just give off like a very fearful, anxious, or submissive vibe, then that could be some of the red flags of sex trafficking. And especially on the other side as well, if they have very visible scars or injuries, if they have no identification documents, and if they just basically have no contact with anyone else. So these are really just like huge red flags that, you know, if you find someone having especially no ID, then you really should be asking if, you know, they need help or anything. So we have gone through a lot of statistics, but here's just more. First of all, there are 5 million victims of sex trafficking worldwide in 2017, and this number has then, I think, climbed up to around 20 million right now. And 99% of sex trafficking victims are women and girls. 7 in 10 victims were exploited in Asia and the Pacific region, but that does not mean that Canada or US as like first world countries or Europe does not experience these issues anymore. 1 in 7 reported runaways in US in 2018 is likely a victim of child sex trafficking. And sex trafficking generates 99 billion US dollars in profits per year. So that is around 99 times, I think, 99 billion. That is around 134 billion in Canadian dollars. And for the rest, I think it's just like numbers that cannot be calculated by my brain. So how and why should you call for action? So let's start with why first. So trafficking victimization share risks and consequences associated with child abuse and neglect, intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and youth violence. And so there are a lot of consequences, and this is just an issue that happens right around us. So now how can you call for action? So first of all, starting with the minimum, we should encourage for healthy behaviors in relationships, and especially like mutual relationships and consensual relationships. But at the same time, we should also foster safe homes and neighborhoods. We should identify and address vulnerabilities during healthcare visits. We should reduce the demand for commercial sex, just because there is a really huge gray area from commercial sex to sex trafficking. And we should end business profits from trafficking related transactions.
So, since you mentioned how many of the victims have left serious trauma after their tragic experiences, what resources would you wish that you had?
So I personally wish we got help with number one. When I exit the game, they told me you can either go unhoused or find your own housing. When I was 17, I thought
That was ridiculous.
and like that. And my was like, why can't you help me and support me and give me housing?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, because like you have no one wants you really right now because you've exhausted all your resources.
So other than housing,
I really wanted to be to get therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I really wanted to get because I got a call that day too from sick kids that I had chlamydia and the records stated that they just told me now that the records stated that I was pregnant long term at the time, but they said in the records that I was in very much denial and that I hadn't stillbirth in 6 months.
mm-hmm.
Like I thought that whole time, and like I would have put so much regret on myself for so many years that I thought that he didn't always himself like abortion, but then like in reality he never did. He was saying to me the whole time to make sure the baby was safe and that he loved me. But I thought he said something different.
Mm-hmm.
That I used so many drugs because I would take every single drug possible, injections, learning, like like substance I mean possible, and like drinking every single night when I got this place because I wanted to try and die basically to see what would happen, like because I would be so depressed.
So, yeah, so you said that you wish to have housing and therapy that helped you. Is there anything else that you wish you had?
I want transitional housing for like females and males.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they get out of either the game or gang activity and like stuff like that, for basically to be able to have a safe space where they can transition out their detox, not their detox, sorry, not from harm reduction ways.
Yeah.
So, here are some just basically things that, the survivors themselves would wish to have. So housing, therapies, and safe places. That is just something that, we should try to aim to advocate for the survivors, because these are resources that are just crucial for them to safely transition back into society. So, I guess we are at 2 p.m. and it's been an hour, so I think we should have like a 5-minute break, and then we'll just spend some quick time to talk about organ trafficking, and then we'll go through the case studies. So we'll be back at 2:05 my time, and just basically in 5 minutes. Okay, so let's give a minute for everyone to be back. And if you are back, please feel free to turn back on your camera so I know you're back, or also just put like a thumbs up or whatever in the reactions as well. I don't know, my food coma is starting to like kick in, so I might start talking a bit slower. Hopefully I can still function well. Yeah. So we have organ trafficking next, and organ trafficking is one of the things that people don't think it's that common in human trafficking, or they don't even think that this is part of human trafficking. But I would also like to cover this topic just because selling organs of a person is still selling the person. And so the term organ trafficking is commonly used to refer to a range of criminal activities, including illegal organ harvesting from a living or dead individual and the illegal sale and transplantation of human organs. Organ trafficking may be considered part of a broader market that includes tissues, cells, or any human body parts or products, or also referred to some by as the red market. So organ trafficking, there are a lot of legalized Canadian laws of organ trafficking, and more likely there should be similar laws in other countries as well. So first of all, you are not allowed to traffic organs from a minor, or you are allowed to receive an organ for financial benefits. And so there are just a lot of things that you are not allowed to do. At the same time, you are not allowed to just basically deceive or threaten or coerce one to have an organ tissue removed. And there's also a UN Palermo Protocol, which is a protocol established by the United Nations to prevent, suppress, and punish acts of organ trafficking. So Canada is one of the 150 countries out of, I think, the 200, I don't know how many countries there are, but yeah, we're one of the 150 countries that have signed the Palermo Protocol to secure its people. Yet at the same time, Canada is still one of the top 10. So, you know, this just shows that just because you have protocols does not necessarily mean that the country is safe itself. And that is why we need to spread awareness. So there is a basically guideline for organ transplantation. And again, we will be speaking from the Canadian experience just because I know it the best. So living donors, you know, genetically, legally, or emotionally related to their patients, to their recipients, just because this minimizes the risk that, you know, you are forcing a complete stranger to, you know, kind of donate their organs to you. And donors must also be well informed and voluntarily consenting to transplantation. And donor selection is based on clinical criteria and ethical norms, not financial considerations. And the entire plantation procedure must be transparent and open to scrutiny. So what are some red flags of someone who has been organ trafficked? So first of all, there are two types of organ trafficking that may be happening. One of them could be voluntarily because, you know, sometimes people need money and they sell their kidney for it. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of cases that you guys already know about people selling their organs just to get some money. At the same time, there could also be forced organ trafficking. So this person could be kidnapped and could be trafficking their victims, trafficking their organs that is not voluntarily. So for voluntarily organ trafficking, some red flags could be that they suddenly gain like a large amount of unexplained money. And for forced trafficking, it could be that this person shows signs of trauma. This person is suddenly like their bodily functions are not working well because, of course, they have an organ removed. And if they have fresh scars on their body, if they avoid showing their body more than normal to hide the scars, and if they just suddenly do not qualify as a health donor but has donated or sold an organ before. So some statistics about organ trafficking. 1 in 10 organ transplants involved a trafficking organ. So that is like 10%, definitely higher than what we need. So 10,000 kidneys are traded on the black market worldwide annually. 2,000 Indians sell their kidney every year. I don't know why we put like an Indian statistics in there, but this just shows that how many people in the world are doing it, because India, as we know, it's a pretty large country with a huge population, and that is just a lot of people. 8% of all kidney transplants are done with a trafficked kidney, and 1.3 in profits are made from the illegal organ trade. So this is a bigger issue than we think it is. And obviously it's not as big as labor or sex trafficking, but we shouldn't have people selling their organs just to, either for money or being forced at all. So here is a real case study story, but we'll go through pretty quickly. There was this victim. They were 19 years old, and they were struggling with debt, desperate for work and money, and they accepted an offer for $5,000. And so basically they just walked downstairs, waited to speak with doctor, and then suddenly they were put into anesthetics and woke up with a sharp pain, and yeah, that just happened like that. So some quote from this survivor was that, "I felt very uncomfortable with Isaac, who was doctor, after talking. He was Eritrean, and he didn't look like a thief. He told me that he smuggles hundreds of people every month and that he doesn't need the money. He made me feel like he was the one doing me the favor. He gave me his number and told me to call him when I was ready." So, a lot of times these traffickers, they put in the, image that they are not really asking anything for you, but instead they're helping you. And this person was just, how should I say this? Was trapped and tricked into this game because he believed that, this person was here to help him. And so what does an organ trafficking do? Why do people get in trouble? So this is not like a 100% type of thing, but generally people may be tricked into the game because the traffickers promises visas or citizenships, or maybe the victims themselves lack education regarding this issue, and they don't have the knowledge to know that sometimes selling organs aren't really for sale, and every single organ has its own purpose. And many sellers do not make their own free decisions in whether to sell their organs as well. So these sellers, by what we mean is the victims, sometimes they are forced, right? And in most cases, this happens under manipulation. So the trafficker might promise something that that they're not going to fulfill, or if they have misinformation or coercion. And so if you look into the statistics that we provided, the supply of legal donated organs is much lower than need. So what will these people in need do? They will look for illegal organs for sale. So I actually got into this study of anti-organ trafficking because of the book. I don't know what it's called in English. It was a French book that I read the Chinese translated version. My mom translated it, and it was just basically about a really rich girl. She needed an organ transplant. Her parents could not find an organ, so they decided to buy an organ, and so that organ was actually a trafficked organ. And the seller had no idea that her organ was removed to save this girl of her own age. So yeah, that was just what happens, and that is what might happen a lot of times, and I think it does happen most of the time. So how are human trafficking and smuggling linked? According to the European Commission, despite fewer numbers of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees are crossing Egypt's central Mediterranean routes, and the closure of borders has driven individuals to even greater extremities, strengthening criminal networkers' grip. Smugglers that operate out of Egypt and Libya have fees from 1,500 to 3,500 to maintain the profits. They're unable to finance travel, so they refer migrants to organ traffickers in Cairo. And if the migrants cannot make a payment of at least $3,500, they are treated like third-class passengers, or basically, if you do not pay them or if you do not help them get what they want, then you are not going to leave as a person with human rights. So at the same time, there are some laws towards organ trafficking. So in 2000, the UN General Assembly adopted the UN Convention against transnational organized crime as a response to the expansion of global crime. And one of the protocols is the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. So basically, the protocol that the UN has is they have like defined human trafficking even broader. So you don't have to be trafficking the entire person. Again, just part of this person's body, part of the organs that they are selling is also human trafficking. So that is the definition that Future Unchained works with. And many countries all over the world ban organ trafficking nationally, and in Egypt and in other countries. So the organ trafficking is banned. Buying and selling organs are also banned. However, of course, not everyone follows these protocols and laws, and that is just something that, again, we need to start to fix by, first of all, spreading awareness. So this is basically what organ trafficking is about. And we definitely have a long way to go for organ trafficking because it's not one of the more like discussed issues. And yeah, I guess, first of all, do we have any questions regarding any types of trafficking that we would need to ask right now? Nope. Okay, we're all good. So in this case, I will kind of take out our case study. I don't really think we will be like going through all of them just because we are already almost at like the 90-minute mark. So what I would try to do is that I would give you guys, I'll read one of them with you. So we can kind of discuss about what is happening. So let's talk about Abigail's story. I'll just give you guys 5 minutes, or I don't know how many time. I guess 5 minutes will be enough to read this, and then we can kind of just talk about how Abigail's story could, like, you know, what we could learn from her story. So I think, does anyone need a minute or two extra to finish reading? Okay. So basically Abigail's story, she was put into drugs and addicted, and so she had to be part of all of the sex trafficking that Jake, the agent, was forcing her to do. And I guess one of the first questions that I would like to ask is, what do you guys think was the vulnerabilities that Abigail carried that the traffickers, so Jake, was able to kind of, take advantage of? So in other words, what was Jake taking advantage of when he was trafficking or working with Abigail? Yeah, Kat.
So basically, when he was the one supplying her with the alcohol, which later turned to, you know, marijuana and then onto crack cocaine that it described. But before that, she had already been victimized before in an abusive home, which turned into public care or child protective services that don't really always provide child protection, as we know. So there was already miserable experiences from previous homes and in whatever homes she had been placed into, also not willingly. So there's a lot of need to escape, not just previous trauma, but current stressors, whatever those may be. They listed as abusive, but we're not sure which kind.
Yeah, 100% for sure. So a lot of times these emotional vulnerabilities and the past traumatic experiences growing up, that that these victims had growing up could also be taken advantage from the traffickers, and to be used to like threaten as well, because before too long Jake stopped being nice to me and he started to threaten me. So that was the means, right? Speaking of that, what would you guys say was the act, means, and purpose of this case? And I would actually, can I call on people? Because I feel like I want to hear from some people that I haven't really heard from. Stella, are you? Yeah, Stella, are you willing to share some of the act, means, and purpose of this case?
So yeah, like the whole her substance abuse, and like her addiction, that was like the trafficker, like Jake's means to kind of keep her there, because she wanted the drugs, and he had a way to like give her the drugs by making her do all of these like acts with different men. And like I feel like the purpose, yeah, like he wanted the money. He had, I know how to say it. I know it, but like the purpose, because he wanted to earn the money
Mm-hmm.
from profiting off of Abigail's services. Was just like kind of lowering Abigail's guard, because like Kat said, she didn't have like a lot of people that she could trust and depend on. And then so when he kind of like entered into her life, he was all of the things that Abigail wished that everybody else had treated her with. So he lowered her guard and made her trust him, and that's how she got into this whole situation. And yeah.
For sure, 100%. So especially I would agree with the means, because drug usage is often a really I wouldn't want to say good method, but it's a very effective method of keeping the victims close. And because a lot of times, first of all, there is addiction, and second of all, because drugs are illegal, and a lot of times these victims are also engaged in drug trade, and they are just scared that, if people know that they are in drug trade, they may be in jail as well. So these traffickers, a lot of times, they put the victims on their own lane, because basically that just means that, if the victims, they share like common interests. So if the victims want to escape, that means they have to kind of prove that the traffickers did something wrong, the traffickers committed a crime. But at the same time, these victims are committing in the same crime with these traffickers. So that is why a lot of times these victims aren't really comfortable reaching out to police, because they are afraid that the police would also charge them for the crimes that they have committed with the traffickers. And this is also why a lot of organizations like the Polaris Project, they are working to kind of just basically help the victims get rid of a criminal record, because they were doing crimes with the traffickers out of their own consent. So since Ali just joined, why don't we yeah, Ali disconnected again. Okay, never mind. Amy, do you have anything that you would like to share? I think we're almost at time, but yeah. Just any thoughts or questions or anything? Sorry, your audio is a bit choppy. If you do have anything, feel free to like send them to me via, I don't know, via Zoom chat. But Kat says stigma regarding substance abuse is also a huge factor, 100%. Beyond being charged, victims are more likely to be brushed off as addicts rather than human beings in the need of assistance, minors as well. Yeah, so this minor aspect, first of all, the being brushed off as addicts, of course, because a lot of people, they kind of mess the cause and effects. So if say we have a victim who is on addiction, a lot of people may say, oh, see, they're addicted to drugs, of course they're going to get trafficked. But that is the wrong logic, because they were trafficked and then they were put on drugs. So a lot of times people hear about drug abuse, drug usage, and then suddenly the victims are the ones that are, in the blame. And at the same time, minors. So, this person is 13 years old, Abigail, 13-year-old female child. Why would a 13-year-old ever go out, run away with others from home to go out drinking? Like, this is really weird logic in the world right now as well, is because that they shouldn't really be allowed to go out to drink anyway. Why are bars offering them to drink? Why are bars offering teenagers to be there, to get in touch, to have the opportunity to meet people like Jake? Why aren't people putting stricter rules or policies regarding teenage drinking? So a lot of these factors combine together to put these tragedies into real life stories, and that is just something that we want to shed light onto, so that everyone just can understand what is happening and why things are happening the way they is. So we have 3 case studies. I have shared them in the Google Classroom. So if you do want to read, feel free to read on your own. At the same time, I will be releasing a question called mini case study. So this mini case study is basically a study that I pulled out from from the US website. I honestly don't know which website, I cannot recall, but yeah, this is a recent case study. And if you want to, feel free to just, again, do the work, answer the questions, and then submit in this Dropbox. It's completely, again, our tasks, most of the tasks are optional, but we recommend you to complete around 80% of the tasks that we have put inside the Google Classroom. So yeah, and again, if you are interested in watching or rewatching the optional film that we were playing today, I have also shared them inside day 4, Don't Look Away. So this is the video that we were watching. And yeah, I think that is what we have. Hope you had learned a lot from day 4, introduction to types of human trafficking and red flags. And we will see you tomorrow with Homera again. Yep, thank you, bye.